Today's episode is brought to you by yourself in the future. Listen, there isn't much time to explain, but you told me to tell you that the dark room lights itself with the love of fat men? I'm not sure what it means, but you said you'd know what it meant. Hurry, there isn't much time. The gate is closing. Something about a baby? I'm not sure. You just kind of faded out after that, but thanks. You, I guess. Hello and welcome to Horror Movie Talk, an opinionated and accidentally funny horror movie review show. Your schlubby hosts each week are Bryce Hanson, the cool collected nihilist, and David Day, a cool guy who's always cool. New theatrical releases always get priority, but we also review older horror movies, both good and horrible. I'm David Day.
I'm Bryce Hanson.
And today we have one heck of an episode for you guys. We are reviewing Us, the most confusingly titled movie ever. But boy, what a lot of hype. Big hype on this.
Yeah, I mean, they went heavily with the 100% on Rotten Tomatoes in their marketing recently, and it kind of underlines what that actually means.
What does that actually mean, Bryce?
I mean, we'll talk more about how good it was, but when you advertise that it's 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, dumb people will think, oh, critics gave it 100% score.
Right.
Like they gave it 10 out of 10. And that's not the case. Rotten Tomatoes measures sentiment. So
right.
If the review is generally positive, it counts as like 1.
Right.
And if it's
negative,
it counts as 0.
Right. So this isn't this is a binary system, not a 100% system.
Right.
Anyway, so reviewing Us, super amped to give you guys a really great show today. We start out by giving a brief review and our score for the movie. We score on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being very bad, 10 being very, very good, possibly, well, definitely one of the best movies we've ever seen, and 5 being totally average, just a kind of a what you expected. After we give our score, we'll get into spoilers and take a deeper dive into what we liked or hated about the film. And later in this episode, we will be doing the Rotten Tomatoes game, and it came from social media to discuss a rather controversial topic between Bryce and I. Which is scarier, earthquakes or sinkholes, as far as natural disasters go? There are some.
And we have a definitive answer.
We do indeed.
So stay tuned for that.
But the Rotten Tomatoes game, I should tell you guys what that's about. So we have different themes, and we pit 2 different movies against each other. I pit them against each other, and Bryce has to determine which one has the higher Rotten Tomatoes score, speaking of Rotten Tomatoes. But first, we're going to plug ourselves. Our website is www.horrormovietalk.com. Check us out on there. We're also on the social media. You can get to our social media from our website, so just do that. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Gram. We post new episodes of our podcast every Wednesday, so you go ahead and just be sure to leave a review and go ahead and subscribe to that podcast on iTunes or whatever it is you tend to listen to your podcasts on. You can support our podcast by buying or renting or buying anything. Movie or product on Amazon. If you click through the green button in the header of our website, again, that's horrormovietalk.com, and it doesn't add any extra cost to your product. It just lets us get a couple cents. We kind of skim off the top. We've worked out a great hack where it's like Superman 2, where we just kind of
it's Superman 3,
fractions of pennies.
Yeah,
and we're just skimming them off the top. Like Office Space also. If you want to support the show and get access to great horror streaming shows, movies, all that kinds of good stuff, head on over to Shudder and use promo code HMT at checkout, and you get 30 days free trial subscription to Shudder. And then if you decide to go for the full-length subscription from there, it's only a couple bucks a month. It's not the $12 that Netflix is now. Oh my God. So thanks again for listening, and let's get into the show. We went and saw Us, and while it was an incredibly solid horror movie, it did not live up to the hype in my eyes. Yes, it had good social commentary and implications. Yes, it is by one of the most respected, if only because of his single debut horror movie, Get Out, writer-directors out there, Jordan Peele. Yes, it starred an all-black cast. It's hard to follow something like Get Out, though, and with something even more impressive, right? I mean, it's hard to trump that, and I'm not even sure that this didn't. Like, this might have trumped Get Out. I can't recall I just recall what I felt coming out of Get Out, and it was more impressive than what I felt coming out of Us. And that's the only sin that Us really committed, is it wasn't more impressive than Get Out.
I mean, you won't be able to live up to Get Out, I don't think, because that's so perfectly encompassed. It's actually kind of interesting that I watched some interviews with Jordan Peele talking about his strategy for, making this sophomore movie, because it's, the sophomore slump of you have a great new director comes out, makes just a fantastic movie, and then gets kind of an open door to say, okay, you get to make whatever you want next.
Yeah.
And a lot of people fuck it up. And Jordan Peele, in this interview, he mentions he specifically looked at the second movies of some of these directors that he really likes. And he mentioned specifically Tarantino, Pulp Fiction,
probably
Shyamalan, which was Unbreakable.
Unbreakable was his second.
And there's one other, but they all kind of had like a common thing of
stumbling block.
No, I mean they're fantastic, but they're more about like just make the movie that you want to see. Don't worry about following up or continuing on from the last movie.
Right.
Don't try to like take what works from the last movie and put it into this movie.
Right. Don't get caught in your head.
Yeah. Make the movie that you want to see.
Yeah.
That otherwise will not get made, Right. And in that case, I think he was really successful on Us, because I don't think this movie could get made otherwise unless it was made by Jordan Peele.
No, that's accurate for sure. And I shouldn't say the only sin that Us committed is not living up to the hype. For me, it was just bare bones, was not that entertaining. It just didn't entertain me as a movie to the extent that Get Out did, or that I was expecting this to.
It definitely was not as tight as Get Out.
Right.
It was a little more
flubby around the middle.
Yeah. It was a lot more amorphous. Like, it wasn't as well defined.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm coming kind of on the opposite boat than you, in that the more I think about this and the more I read about it from where Jordan Peele's coming from, the more I actually like it.
Hey, that's fair.
I respect it more over time. And it's kind of like the same thing with, some of these classic horror movies that are labeled as, the best of all time.
Yeah.
One of them being The Shining. I mean, for me, seeing it the first time, it's not that impressive.
Right.
But on repeat viewings, I start to pick out like, okay, yes, this is the stuff that works.
Yeah, that's a good parallel to draw for us is The Shining, because there's a lot of the same care that went into The Shining went into Us very clearly.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I don't believe. Well, like I said before, it's just Us just didn't entertain me as much as a lot of movies.
Yeah, that's fair.
So with that, let's get into the trailer.
That's a classic right there.
What does I got 5 on it mean?
It's about drugs.
It's not about drugs. It's a dope song. Don't do drugs.
Get in rhythm.
See?
go.
You people.
It's us.
They look exactly like us. They think like us. They know where we are. We need to move and keep moving. They won't stop until they kill us. Or we kill them.
Be careful.
Okay. That is a master's class of a trailer. That trailer is damn near. I can't think of another trailer that's better than the Us trailer.
It was really good. I can't say that. Yeah, I mean, I had my doubts when I first saw it. I'll admit, like, because I didn't know exactly what he was going for at all. But I mean, that's usually a good thing with a trailer, is that you don't want to give away too much. But yeah, it's a really good trailer.
The soundtrack on the trailer, that I got 5 on it, that goes minor key, and then it turns super chilling, and all the visuals in it are alarming in the extreme, and really, it just. I'm gonna say that the trailer kind of ruined the movie for me. I think that's part of it, because I had reservations about the trailer. I was excited about the movie mostly because it's Jordan Peele, but I think I tempered my expectations a little bit, because I'm like, I don't know if I can completely trust that this movie is going to be great. I have like a 90% chance of it being really great. I'll tell you, the trailer really sets up, like, it sets up, oh, this movie is going to be a visual stunner, and it's going to offer a lot of really disturbing visuals to me that are unnerving in the extreme. And it's not that the movie doesn't do that, it's just that you've seen them already. All the big weird, creepy, weird shit is in the trailer, and so it has a lot less impact when you do see it in the movie, especially considering there is some fat to trim on this movie.
Yeah.
But Us can be found in theaters right now. You guys should definitely go out and see it, because, no matter how critical, quote unquote, critical I am of this movie, I don't think I'm being unjust or unfair, but this will be a movie that will be talked about by a lot of people for a long time, the same way Get Out was and is. So get out to theaters and see it, because it is quite an experience. Us is the story of a mother, played by the astonishingly good actress Lupita Nyong'o, who is haunted by a traumatic experience she had in her childhood. It's also about her current-day family as they go on a vacation somewhere nice near Santa Cruz. They are haunted by a family of shadow people who resemble them, but are twisted and perverted, and kind of inverse. At its core, Us is a home invasion horror movie. Us is also a smart critique on America today, both politically and socioeconomically. Even more, it's a fun and, at times, funny movie that everyone can probably appreciate. I give Us a 7 out of 10, and let me go into a little bit of why. While it's all the things I described above, it's not particularly impressive in any standout way, other than it is a very well-made film. It's a solid movie that people will talk about. It's just not that. It's just not that thrilling. I was fairly bored during about 1/3 of this movie, and a lot of that was while the cat and mouse game played out between these two mirror families. It is an intricate, well-crafted film with an eye on symbolism and obvious deep meaning. It just didn't entertain me like I hoped it would. So 7 out of 10 from me. What say you?
I'm not far off. I gave it an 8 out of 10. I think I really appreciate all the things it did really well. I think it handled the suspense and the thrilling aspects of it really well. It wasn't, I think, to get into 9 territory, I mean, it's definitely not a 10. It's not like a classic of all time.
Right.
To get to 9 territory, I have to be like delighted throughout. And I wasn't delighted throughout, but I was really, really impressed with a lot of things in this movie. And, I also try to temper my jadedness from seeing, every horror movie that comes out. I think what it had going for it is it had a solid concept. It was well thought out. It was well executed. A lot of the overlooked touches in a lot of horror movies were handled lovingly.
Yeah.
Like the score
Big
was fantastic. The acting was great. The character development and all that stuff was really, really well crafted in this movie. That being said, like, there weren't a lot of times where I was like, I'm super enjoying myself right now. It was just more like, this is a really good movie.
That is exact. I'm so glad that you kind of fleshed that out a little bit more, because I was teetering between a 7 and an 8, and I was feeling a lot of pressure because of what this movie is and what it kind of represents. The sophomore film by one of the most impressive, just out the gate, directors who just happens to be black and makes movies about, essentially starring an all black cast. But what it boils down to for me is I just wasn't overjoyed. I wasn't having the fun time that I thought I would be in this movie, and that's where the 7 comes from. Everything else about this movie is really well done, and there's just this is like the killing of a sacred deer for you,
Right.
For me, it really, really worked because it entertained me. It was dry and kind of horrible, and I loved it.
Right.
But it didn't tickle you. No. And this just, it just didn't entertain me the way I hoped it would.
Yeah. I mean, it's the other part that it comes down to, I think between a 7 and 8, comes down to like what you value more.
Yeah.
And I think I value the thematic material of like fleshing something out enough to where you have a complete picture, but you have a good picture of what's going on, but not a complete picture.
Right. It can be interpreted.
So there's a lot of wiggle room for interpretation.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of like,
and we'll get into that.
Questions about like the world itself. Like how does this really work? Why is this thing the way it is?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I've also watched some interviews about is that Jordan Peele said this movie has a very, very well fleshed out mythology and backstory, and it was just a question of how much do you show.
Right.
Because if you explain everything, about why these doppelgangers exist.
You leave nothing open to interpretation.
You leave nothing open to interpretation, and it becomes less interesting and less scary.
Right.
So that's something that I realized throughout. I'm like, there's more to this that he's not showing, and it's never given to you. And it's but it gives you enough to where you know, like, the 5 or 6 different ways it could go.
Right. And that's what this movie did incredibly well. Don't get me wrong. Like Peele is approaching Kubrick territory in the care, effort, and thought that goes into the process of film production and filmmaking.
Yeah.
I mean, without question, you can interpret this a lot of different ways. And right out the movie theater, we both had our opinions.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a really fun movie to psychoanalyze.
Yeah.
Because you can do it a bunch of different ways. And depending on where your head's at when you watch it, you'll come away with something for sure.
Right.
So, yeah, and so that's kind of my next point, which is one of the many things that Us has going for it, is this is going to be a conversation starter at parties, in, like, friend groups. Like, this is going to be a movie that is discussed for a long, long time, just because it is so good at that. So, with that, let's get into the spoilers. Spoilers. So, in this section, we just go through and tell you everything that happens in the movie. So, if that's not your jam, if you don't want to know everything about Us, push pause, head on out, take a friend, bring your mom, go see Us, and then, after you're done, hit play again. So Us begins in 1986 on the Santa Cruz boardwalk, with young Adelaide having a fun time with her parents on the boardwalk. At some point, she wanders off and discovers a house of mysteries below the boardwalk, which is where she first comes into contact with her quote-unquote tethered self. This intro to this movie is nearly perfect in the way it builds tension and sets atmosphere. I was enthralled immediately, and if anything, it just upped the hype for me. The beach at night is a fucking scary place. If you've walked on the beach at night, you know what I'm talking about. And he captures it really well in this. Yeah.
Wow, that's an observation that I didn't even think about, but you're completely right. Something about not being able to see the ocean, but here it is actually really frightening, isn't it?
And it's that big, long expanse that you can just kind of stare off into.
Just blackness.
Just blackness in every direction. Oh, yeah. The beach at night, man.
Yeah.
If you haven't been, don't go.
So, yeah, she goes into the House of Mirrors, or the haunted house thing that was called, I wrote it down, Merlin's Forest, and then subtitled, Find Yourself.
Ooh.
Did you notice that it said find yourself? Because she found herself. So, yeah, she finds her doppelganger.
Queen Doppelpopolis, if you will. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she goes into this House of Mirrors / fun house. She bumps into a little girl who looks like herself. And this deeply traumatizes Adelaide. And she stops talking following this event for some time. So then we fast forward to the present day, and Adelaide is a middle-aged woman with kids and a family, and she is driving with her family to their vacation house near Santa Cruz. Dun dun. Santa Cruz is like Transylvania, Pennsylvania. Adelaide is nervous about returning to the scene of the crime that caused her so much agony as a child. The family has a few strange run-ins at the beach and a small scare at the beach, and then they meet up with their friends, the Tylers, played by Tim Heidecker and Elizabeth Moss. And I got to tell you, Bryce, that Tim Heidecker I can't take seriously in any role he plays at all. portion of this movie was ruined because Tim was in it.
No, I think it adds to it. I love it.
I just see him and I go, well, that's Tim from Tim and Eric.
The part where his doppelganger comes out in the bathrobe is like, like none of the doppelgangers can really talk except for one. And
Queen Doppelpopolis.
Queen Doppelpopolis. But they all kind of have their own
Mumbles.
kind of mannerisms.
Yeah.
And so Tim Heidecker's doppelganger character
Is Tim.
Is Tim just kind of mumbling like the words he would say is like, "Is that you I see there? Well, my friend, come right in." But it's like, and he's like wearing his bathrobe. I don't know. It really works for me.
Well, I mean, I'm just as soon as I see Tim Heidecker in anything, it doesn't matter if it's an interview on the news, it doesn't matter what it is. I just know whatever's going to happen is going to be so fucking meta, or my experience is going to be so meta because of my experience watching Tim, which is basically a fever dream every time I see him.
Yeah, a lot of the time, just the humor of the Tim and Eric show, or even just a lot of his projects, like his movie. I can't remember what his movie was called. And he does the comedy, I think it's called.
Yeah, it's that. Yeah.
And he even has like a YouTube video series where he's on trial, and it's all just played so straight that at one point I'm like, is this too smart for me? Is like, am I not smart enough to find this funny? But at the other side, it's just like, you can tell that he's having so much enjoyment out of making me think that,
right,
that's where the comedy is.
Right.
So he set himself up to play straight characters, and you're always at this point of unease of like, is he being funny?
It's very Kaufman-esque.
Yeah.
It's so he's conditioned you to anytime you see him, you have a Pavlovian response.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of, it's what it is. So
yeah.
Tim Heidecker kind of pulled me out of this movie a little bit. That being said, he did a good job. He did what he was supposed to do. I assume him and Peele are pretty close, or at least that's what I like to believe in my brain.
Right.
So her husband believes that she's overreacting when she starts having panic attacks about the safety of her family and the area in general. At some point, Adelaide starts saying, "Hey, it's getting to be nighttime. Let's just jet. I don't like this place. Let's get out of this house." But when they're getting ready to go to bed that night, the action really ramps up when they see a family standing in their driveway, which is a brilliant intro to the bad guy.
Yeah, and this was in the trailer, and it's great. It's a great, what would you call it? There's another word for it. I'm thinking vignette, but it's more of a like the snapshot
portrait.
It's a great like snapshot, that seeing the family in the distance, just in silhouette, holding hands, and they're not moving and they're not reacting at all, is just something very great. And I watched a video, a New York Times video of Jordan Peele breaking down this scene in particular, and it was really interesting. What he brought up was that when you have a scene where someone's asking a person a question and the person does not respond, after about 2 times asking and no response, like, the tension is built up because this is not a conversation. This is going to get physical.
Right.
That's just a universal. If you saw an animal that wasn't reacting to you and just staring at you, and it wasn't reacting to like you trying to scare it away or something, you'd be like, "Oh shit, I'm
really fucked right now."
Yeah, something's about to go down.
That little kitty is going to kill me.
And then he also pointed out how, to increase the tension on that scene, it went to real time, which I didn't notice on the first viewing, but it really was a one shot for a lot of it, with the family inside the house as they're reacting to the family outside. And it goes from, being a regular movie cut, like, jumping between characters where they're going, and then it goes to this moment where they're all in one place and it's all happening real time, and it feels more of a documentary, and it really like shifts the tone.
Yes,
subtly.
That's right. Yeah, instead of being stationary cameras, suddenly you're locked in a
It's got a lot more steady cam.
Yeah, that moves
stuff.
with them and steady cams around. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, but that intro. So what? Yeah, I mean, essentially, the little boy, Jason, comes out and says, "Hey, there's a family in the driveway."
Yeah.
Then they kind of go and do what you would do: stand in the entryway and look through the window and be like, "What the fuck is going on out there?" The whole family's like sitting there looking, and you just get this silhouette of this other 4-person family just standing there in the driveway, and the dad starts getting, he's like, "All right, it's time to take care of this," which any dad kind of relates to. It's like, well, I got time to nut up or shut up, so go get my bat. And so I really heavily related to this guy who, he's wearing a Howard University sweatshirt, and he's clearly not, quote unquote hard, but now it's time to act it. And so he goes and gets, his girl goes and gets the bat, and he goes outside and he's like, "Hey, I asked you nice, could you leave? It's time to go. Like, if you want to go, we can go." And then the most disturbing thing happens. I get chills just thinking about it, which is, and you see it in the trailer, right that second, they just split up.
Scatter.
Yeah, the two kids run off into the dark.
Start flanking them.
Yeah, start flanking them, getting around the back of the house or whatever, and the mom and dad or start walking directly at him. So immediately he's outnumbered and flanked, and
starts backing up.
Woo, boy, man! Like thinking about this happening to me, and this is why home invasion horror is one of my very favorites, because it's so plausible. I mean, it could happen much more easily than Freddy hitting you in your nightmares, right? Probably not going to be killed in your dreams by
a doppelganger,
by a fantasy man a burn victim,
right.
But people could come to your house and fuck you up.
Yeah, a burn victim could come to your house and kill you.
Right. Which actually we'll get into. Yeah, so at this point, there's a lot of so at this point, the action basically begins. It's go time. And there's a lot of chasing and being chased in Us, which is the least fun part in this movie for me. There weren't very many genuinely disturbing moments at this point. It was just kind of run around, chase your counterpart. And this is kind of where it started to lose me, because after that initial visual...
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. A lot of it was less about the creativity in the chase and more about communicating the differences between the characters and their doppelgangers.
Right.
And that was interesting, but not as interesting as the time dedicated warranted necessarily.
Right. There was a lot of time dedicated to it.
There was a couple. I mean, I like the father's chase on the boat.
On the boat.
That was probably the standout one.
Yeah.
The mother was just kind of tied up, and then the daughter was just running, and nothing really interesting happened other than it shows that yes, this doppelganger will kill people.
Yeah. The stakes are high. The stakes are death.
Yeah.
Yeah. At this point, so I don't know how far away. I'm gonna do this next section.
In terms, like, the most impressive thing about the chase sequence for me of the family all dispersing and being chased around different parts of the house and across like
the street
and in the lake and stuff. The most impressive is that it was a very convincing reunification of all of them.
Right.
Like they all came together at right around the same time and it all made sense.
Yeah.
And they escape.
Right.
Which is pretty impressive how he pulled it off. But at the same time, like, probably wasn't actually necessary to have all that chase sequence.
Right.
Could have had like the scene in the living room by the fire and communicate those differences between the. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to second guess Jordan Peele. I think it worked out really pretty well. I agree with you. It wasn't as exciting as it probably could have been for those chase sequences,
and as it was portrayed in the trailer. Yeah, but thinking back on Get Out, it wasn't a movie with over the top scares. Get Out was not a scary, terrifying movie. It had a few jump scares.
It was a lot of tension building.
Right. It created ambiance and mood and tension.
Yeah,
and this movie did not have that build. It did. It did have little builds, but it didn't have that big overarching thing, which I'm more of a fan of. This was much more of a slasher-ish kind of version of a movie instead of a long...
It was a straight-ahead horror movie. I mean, you could describe Get Out as a thriller, and you would be more on the thriller side of thriller horror. This is definitely a horror movie. It's not... Even from the beginning, it's not really setting itself up to be a thriller or a mystery or anything. The one other thing that I want to mention or say I appreciated in this sequence is when the father gets batted in the knee.
Yeah,
through the door. Okay, so like it's a pretty great trope, and I like it when they use it in movies to where they have a character that is, I mean, the father's not necessarily the most intimidating person.
But he's a
personality wise, but he is like definitely over 6 feet, and he's like over 250.
Yeah, he's a large man.
Like, and it's not all chub. I mean, he's got some muscle on. Yeah, like I could see he's like got an athletic build. He could fuck someone up. If you get on the wrong side. And so when he comes out with a bat, you're like, okay. I mean,
run away.
Yeah, he can do what he needs to do. And if I was up against him, I'd be like, yeah, he could probably kick my ass with a bat.
For sure. Yeah.
And then, like, the parallel for me for this is Deliverance. In Deliverance, what's his name? Just died.
Burt Reynolds.
Burt Reynolds' character in Deliverance is set up to be the alpha male, the one that knows how to do everything, knows how to survive, and can fuck people up. And almost immediately, he gets injured and is useless.
Right.
So that's what happens in this movie. The father that is the most intimidating and is the most able to actually do harm to these intruders immediately gets crippled.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole movie, he's completely useless.
In a convincingly dorky way as well. And he's just like bonk on the ankle, and it's like, ow, god damn it. Oh, my ankle. It's like, yeah, I can relate to that.
Or his knee or something. Yeah, I mean, his leg is out of commission, so he's like hobbled and like using stuff as a crutch throughout the whole movie. And it's like, yeah, I mean, you can have like the one thing that you're like, okay, we can count on this thing for our security, and have it just completely taken away from you immediately.
Yeah.
From something very trivial.
Yeah.
And that's a great horror movie trope.
It is a great horror movie trope. And there's nothing in Us that is going to make you angry as far as continuity goes. This movie is solid.
Yeah.
It is well thought out and crafted from beginning to end. So you're not gonna be hampered by some niggling thing where it's like, didn't he just get hit in the knee with a bat and now he can't walk? Yeah, he did, and he can't walk for basically the rest of the movie.
Right. Yeah.
so yeah, that is the other trope in this movie that he did not break away from was the black guy died first.
No, wait. Wasn't the first death a white guy?
Oh, maybe.
The guy that interrupted the daughter doppelganger.
Oh,
he came out and was like, "Get off my car, please."
Oh, yeah.
And she's, giving him the
good call. Good call.
This is like a bizarro horror movie. The white guy dies first.
So when we meet these tethered people, they get all the family together in the living room, and the doppelgangers tell the story of the doppelganger of Adelaide tells the story of who they are and how they came to be. And she can actually talk. She can kind of talk. She's got this raspy voice, and she's telling this very disturbing story. And basically what it boils down to is this middle-class happy family that is the Wilsons has an inverse family of tethered people who are forced to live underground and have lives that are the inverse of their above-ground counterparts. The doppelganger family lives in a place where suffering and cruelty is normal. This family has the last name Red. They hate their above-ground counterparts for obvious reasons and have decided to take their lives.
Yeah, so it points out, it's an interesting mythos because it says that they were created, it says that explicitly, that they're created to be a copy of everyone above ground.
Right.
With the exception being they don't have a soul.
Right.
That the soul is shared between the two bodies, which is a really interesting concept to me. Just like, that's really kind of a cool idea, and that these bodies without a soul are tethered or tied to the fates and what the people above ground are doing.
Right.
So when it flashes between above ground and below ground, you see, people in line at a carnival or fighting or whatever above ground, and below ground in these rooms of looks like a office space, they're reenacting the same scenes that are happening upstairs, but there's no context for it at all, and they're just helpless.
Yeah, they're like puppets.
Yeah. And yeah, that'd be a pretty horrific existence.
It's interesting because it paints the analogy of you can't have one without the other, right? You can't have the good without the bad.
Right.
They exist in tandem all the time, whether you like it or not, whether it's hidden, whether you can see it. It doesn't matter. You have this duality that exists in humanity.
Yeah, so they have reason to be pissed off.
Right.
Because their fates are tied to these people above ground, and the people above ground have all the privilege and have all the good things, and the people below ground have nothing.
Right. And let's be clear, this is, as far as we know, all of America. There is a line in this movie where she says, "Who are you people?" And she says, "We are America."
Or we're Americans.
We're Americans. Yeah, I'm sorry. But I took that very, very literally to mean we are America, basically.
Yeah. So this is another area where I've gained more respect the more I've thought about it and the more I've seen, interviews about it, is that, well, maybe we should get into like what your theory is about what it actually means.
Yeah, sure. So my initial, my knee-jerk reaction was I couldn't shake that this was an obvious criticism of an America who voted for Trump, or what America has become today. Not necessarily because of Trump, but there are some fairly strong ties that I saw. The evil, first of all, let's start off with the quote-unquote evil people, or the perversions, were called Red. Mm-hmm. So, I mean,
the Republicans,
right? Basically, that just seemed to fit in my mind. This is the puzzle that my mind is putting together. There is a fear of invaders in this movie, of foreign people foreign to us who we may believe are below us. And this paints a very literal picture of that. Like, there are people below us.
Right.
These people exist below us, actually. There's a point in the movie where they reference Hands Across America, which seems like a direct reference to the Mexico Wall to me. Americans uniting together to keep people out and join hands to form a literal wall. The suggestion that we don't really know who we are seems to be paramount in this movie. We are a nation divided. Half of us would like very much to ignore the other half, and that kind of goes both ways for the left and the right. Also, following the twist ending, there is a earth-shattering twist ending on this. We are who we hate. I'm sorry. Yeah, we are who we hate, suggesting that those who think they're innocent are just as guilty. So, no, it doesn't matter what side you're on. You're complicit somehow in something too.
Right. And it's kind of interesting, even that analogy, just drawing it in those lines, that it's not a one-to-one thing, and there's still a lot of wiggle room, because you say, okay, the doppelgangers represent Republicans. They're red, so
Right.
the red states or whatever. But also they represent the
Mexico.
The
Sure.
Mexicans or the lower class people
Right.
that are disenfranchised.
Right.
So I think looking at some of the interviews and what Jordan Peele says about this, a couple things. One, the title has a double meaning, is, us, but also U.S.
U.S. Yeah.
And so I think that's pretty, not completely blatant, but not, too hard to decode.
Right.
But he talks about the idea of doppelgangers was always disturbing to him, and he references a specific Twilight Zone episode, which is interesting because he's remaking the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Which is annoying because I might have to get CBS on demand or whatever just to watch it.
It's coming out on
Yeah, it's not going to be on TV. It's going to be on their subscription service.
brutal.
But anyways, he talks about it as being the idea of us versus them when it's really just all us.
Right. You're fighting yourself if you're fighting your neighbor.
And I really love that idea.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of my favorite concepts of society, and how harmful that is to have an us versus them mentality, to where you have one narrative and they have another, as opposed to just thinking about it
We're
as
all in this together.
unbiased and, we're all in the world. We're all trying to live with the same, freedom.
Yeah.
we're all trying to live happy lives and be able to, have a family
and be nice. Yeah.
and be happy.
Yeah, this came with the tethered souls, that all of this
Yeah,
speaks very loudly to all of this.
Yeah, and us versus them, you could tie it to different classes. You could tie it to different races. I mean, and there's a lot of really interesting metaphors in there. Like, looking at classes, the upper class and lower class workers, or you could even just say management versus labor.
Yeah.
They are tied together. You can't have one without the other. You can't be like a rich billionaire with a giant mansion and 50 acres without, some immigrant taking care of take care of your yard or being your maid or something. I mean, that's just how it is.
Yeah, paint it however you want. You need the duality always exists. There will always be that give and take, and that there will always be that
privilege and disenfranchisement.
Right.
It's part of human nature, and it is horrifying.
Right. And there is a portion of this that kind of it's almost like a shame on you for not realizing that what you do to your neighbor, you also do to yourself. And that gets us to the Bible verse that continuously appears in this film over and over and over again. Jeremiah 11:11 reads, "Therefore thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will bring evil upon them, which they shall not be able to escape. And though they shall cry unto me, I will not hearken unto them." I won't listen to their cries.
Right. So I looked at this verse too, and kind of looked at the context around it. But first of all, that's a great Bible verse for a horror movie. Mm-hmm. Just saying, I'm going to send you an evil that you can't escape, which is great in terms of home invasion and a chase movie.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's the whole point. You can't escape it.
Yeah.
They're here and they're coming after you. But also, the context around it is talking about Israel's covenant with God, and that they've broken it. Ooh. And so if you're going to extend the metaphor around that verse, you could say, listen, we have a social contract, in the U.S. where all men are created equal. We find these truths to be self-evident. And we want to have a society where there's equality and freedom, and no one's disenfranchised, and everyone, has the same opportunity.
Right.
And I think that what this film is saying is that, you've broken this covenant.
Yeah.
You've broken this law, and now you will suffer the consequences of your actions, which is you will have an evil come upon you that you cannot escape, which is,
it's compelling.
It's compelling.
Yeah. So lots to kind of unwrap there. There's also, there's just so many different ways that you could interpret that. I'm going to get back to the tributes that Peele pays in Us. Some of the things that I noticed and wrote down in this movie. So the callbacks are real in this movie. He is.
You can tell what his influences are.
Oh yeah.
And I read that he had the cast watch several horror movies that to have like a common language. And one of the ones that jumps out even from one of the very first shots is Kubrick.
Yeah.
That forest shot, it's not as long as in The Shining, but it's taken straight out of The Shining.
Yeah.
Like the helicopter shot of the forest as they're driving to the home. It's like straight Shining.
There's so much of this movie that's a tribute. Like the whole movie is basically one giant tribute. And actually, I think it's a little bit to blame for what I found slow or boring about this movie. Because there's so much because there's so much effort being paid to go, look, this is Freddy Krueger. Can you see that this is Freddy Krueger? Look, this kid's name is Jason. It's Jason. And then they say it 1,000 times. So let's just go down the list of things that I saw in this movie. So just the big obvious one was kind of at the beginning. You're watching Hands Across America on TV, and off to the side there are a couple VHS tapes, one of which is Chud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wrote that down too.
The other of which is Goonies. And there was another one that was that said 141 minutes. And I couldn't figure out what that was. But after digging a little bit, Us is 141 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So there's that. And then Michael Jackson's Thriller t-shirt.
Yeah, Michael Jackson, they have the Thriller. Jordan Peele mentioned that he was kind of like a mascot for this movie in that there's duality surrounding Michael Jackson, black and white, and holy cow, this recent
Neverland
documentary that came out is like...
Was it called Escaping Neverland or something like that?
Something like that, yeah. But it's, right after we'd kind of come to rest with Michael Jackson of all right, he's dead. We respect his, his legacy or whatever. And it comes back a couple of years later is no, he really, really molested children. Look. And you're like, God damn it. Yeah, he did.
Yeah, but boy, can he dance. You can get away with anything.
The ultimate get out of jail free card in America.
Look at those hips don't lie, man.
Boy can dance.
Yeah, god damn. Like Chuck Berry did it.
Chris Brown.
R. Kelly. Listen to that heavenly voice.
Yeah.
That was that one thing that that every victim in the R. Kelly thing kept saying over and over again. Every victim who was kept in a closet at R. Kelly's house was they all said one thing in common.
He ripped my anus when I was 12 years old, but man, he could sing.
Man, every night he just sung like an angel.
So anyways, yeah, Michael Jackson, not only the Thriller call out, but also the evil people all had one glove, and that was attributed to Michael Jackson,
right?
Too.
Yeah, there's the Jaws T-shirt, which Jason wears for a good portion of this movie.
Jordan Peele mentioned specifically the line, "There's a family in our driveway," as trying to capture. He called an Amblin-esque line, like "They're here" from Poltergeist.
They're here.
Yeah, and that's. I'm just impressed with people that are able to use cinematic quotations and inspirations in a way that isn't completely blatant.
Yeah, slamming you in the face.
Yeah, that I appreciate it.
Yeah,
that's really good. You took it and made it your own because you like it.
Yeah, a main character, as I've said before, is named Jason, so that hits Friday the 13th. His counterpart. Is a victim, is a burn victim, and has a burn on his face, a la Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, there you go.
All the villains are wearing jumpsuits, so that's a callback to Halloween. Jason wears a mask,
Yeah.
so that covers Halloween and Friday the 13th. And there's just a lot of this where he's like putting that in your face in not quite the most skillful way, where it's like, look, I really like Halloween. Just look at the fucking, look how much I like it.
Yeah, I mean, but what like slasher where people are chasing you after you is not referencing Halloween though.
Touche. Yeah, it's a good point.
But yeah, I didn't think about that, but yeah, the jumpers are definitely that.
So the soundtrack in this movie, wow.
Fantastic.
Yes.
It's one of those where you realize, yes, orchestral soundtracks, please, for horror movies.
Yeah.
It's so much better.
It really is.
Than like these digital and just like even like the screeching and like metallic sound effects stuff. Like, yeah, it's creepy and scary, but there's nothing as impactful as like a symphonic sting.
Yeah. Analog, you have to go analog for whatever it is because it's just visceral.
Yeah.
And that's what you want. Look at Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Those weird sounds from the slaughterhouse that they recorded, and they're so alarming sounding just because it's a real sound made in real life, and that doesn't sit well.
Yeah, I want to pull up this one sound just a second. Yeah, so here's like a couple examples. These are just samples off of Amazon. First of all, I just want to say how much I appreciate and love creepy choral music.
Go on.
There's something about like staccato,
Oh, I got
foreign
chills.
language sung that's
Yeah.
like just great. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah. You can't beat that. And that's like straight out of Rite of Spring by Stravinsky. Like that. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah,
Like that's like.
the Russians are great at creepy shit. Oh man.
But man, yeah, the soundtrack is fantastic. And it's all original. Like most of it.
Right.
Is all original.
And
There's a couple great. Yeah.
The stuff that isn't original is still appropriate and fun and real, like, you know,
right on the nose, too.
iconic, right on the nose. Fuck the police coming straight out the underground. Coming straight out the underground.
Yeah, that's great.
Like, I mean, just talking about it gives me chills. I mean, bazinga. So the ultimate spoiler.
Yeah, that was one of the best. That's one criticism I might have about this movie is that there wasn't enough light moments, or the light moments didn't like make me.
They didn't land.
Laugh out loud, and that probably would have pushed me over the edge to a 9 if Jordan Peele had flexed his comedy muscles a little more on the script.
Yeah, I agree.
But the one that was great was they have like the Alexa stand-in. I can't remember what it's called, like Alyssa or something like that.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth Moss is like, Alyssa, call
911.
No, call the police. Plain fuck the police. And it was, yeah, that was one that actually landed pretty well.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, any scene where Tim Heidecker was in was light.
Yeah.
He did lighten it up quite a bit. So the ultimate spoiler for this, so, you know, avert your gaze. At the end, it is revealed that the underground copy of Adelaide kidnapped and swapped places with the above ground girl in 1986. This insinuates that we are them and they are us. We're totally interchangeable. Under the right circumstances, where you are socioeconomically determines who you are. And that's all she wrote, kind of. It's the environment that makes the person. And one thing I noticed that was that none of the Red family could talk except for Adelaide. She kind of rasped at them, but she could talk because underground, no one talked. But Adelaide had a couple years under her belt being above ground. She could remember how to talk.
Yeah.
And so the ability to talk was mostly lost in Adelaide, who was forced underground. This also explains the supposed PTSD issue following the events of the 1986 boardwalk.
Yeah, it wasn't her like being frightened. It was her literally like
learning to
being
speak.
a different person.
Yeah. She's learning to speak for the first time because she hasn't ever heard words before. So I'm going to go to the final recommendations.
Wait.
Okay.
I want to talk about one more thing. Lupita Nyong'o. I mean, we said briefly how fantastic she was in this, but she was the best performance out of this.
Yeah, by far.
And I learned watching some clips on YouTube that she was like full method actor for this. So when she was rehearsing being Red, she was like, Jordan Peele said he'd like come into her dressing room and she'd be just standing in the corner, motionless and only using that voice. Just like, okay, I will be on set in 5 minutes. You know, just
wow,
like,
you're really good at that.
Can you imagine how creepy that would be? Just having her method acting off this.
I'd fire her on the spot. I'd be like, get out of here. You fucking wigging me out, lady.
But yeah, I mean, she was definitely committed, and she had like a whole, researched like a particular vocal deformity or vocal like malady.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, her commitment to that character and differentiating it was the most convincing, and kind of outshone a lot of the other actors. The father in this like kind of drew me out sometimes. He wasn't that great in a lot of scenes.
Yeah, he was goofy. I think the intent behind his character was to be kind of the light.
Yeah, the daughter was really great. The son was young but pretty good. Yeah, talked about Tim Heidecker.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Moss was pretty great too, just being like basic white bitch.
Yeah. Yeah, she's great. Is it vodka o'clock? It's like, okay.
Yeah.
We get it. You drive a minivan.
Oh yeah, the other part, just talking about the tethered, the other metaphor that I thought it could have represented was consumerism, because the idea of duplicating bodies and having one soul, and then it's mentioned specifically that the intent of it was to be able to control the above ground people by manipulating the people underground, but it didn't work. It worked the other way around.
It reversed.
Okay. And then last thing I want to talk about is, do you think that this is connected with the Get Out universe?
That's a really good question. I didn't consider that.
I do.
Go on.
So if you think about the basic premise of Get Out, which is they are transplanting the mind of one person into another body,
right,
to perpetuate their life. It's not that far to like say, oh, we'll just create a duplicate of your body and insert your mind into that one.
Whoa.
So it's like the moral question of, if you could clone a human, one of the ideas is you could clone like your baby or your child when it's born and just have it not have a brain.
Have a backup.
And you have a backup. You have a full body worth of organs that you can harvest. Like, I think he's got, and he mentions, Jordan Peele mentions in interviews how he has a whole fleshed out, like a very fleshed out backstory for all of this. And I'm willing to bet that part of that backstory is connecting the worlds of these two movies.
Yeah.
In terms of like having transplant bodies,
At the start of this movie, this movie actually starts with a text on screen that mentions that America has hundreds, thousands, millions of miles of tunnels and underground
that are charted and uncharted.
That are charted and uncharted, and most go unused, unnoticed, and forgotten. And so that's a very compelling theory.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Hey.
I think he's going to go M. Night Shyamalan, and like the third movie, he's going to be like, oh yeah, look, here's the guy from Get Out.
Breaking news! Horror movie talk. Bringing it to you first. The theory that they're all connected.
Probably same theory that a billion YouTubers have already posted by the time this episode comes out.
No, just us.
Okay.
So, final recommendations. Who would like this? I'm going to say, you go ahead.
I think if you liked the like social commentary aspects of Get Out, you'll like this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a very high quality movie. Like I think I could recommend pretty much anyone to go see it. Like it'll satisfy a lot of people. I mean, people will have criticisms, but not to the point where they'll completely hate it.
Right.
Like, I think the people that hate it on Twitter and stuff are the people that had super high expectations and are like, oh, this is dumb. It's a boring movie. It's like, I mean, if you compare it to, other horror movies, it's really great.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And, I think anyone who enjoys a movie with a deep, well thought out meaning or symbolism will be able to latch on to something within this movie. Yeah. And I think that's actually what will drive a lot of the hate for this movie, because you're going to read into it what you want to. And unless you, and a lot of, if you choose to make this about something that goes against your beliefs, or then it will become that, and you'll shut down and you'll just go, this is about the left being right, or something like that.
This is criticizing me.
Right. This is directly criticizing me, and you will stop looking at this. But in reality, this movie really is all encompassing in its effort to say, no, everyone's at fault, in my opinion. Anyway, so if you really like home invasion horror, this is a must see. You got to see it. It's not the best home invasion horror, but it is home invasion horror, and has some what will be long-term iconic shots and callbacks and all kinds of stuff. So with that, that's our review of Us.
Sweet.
Let's get into our first game, which is the Rotten Tomatoes game.
The French.
And so the Rotten Tomatoes game is a game where I present two movies to Bryce, and he has to ferret out which one has the higher Rotten Tomatometer score. And we usually have a theme for the Rotten Tomatoes game, and my theme for this one is an Us theme. So the theme is director versus themselves. So you're going to get two movies given to you, Bryce.
Okay.
And they are going to be from the same director. And so you have to guess which movie has the higher Rotten Tomatometer score. Are you ready?
Sorry, I was distracted. What are we doing? What was the theme?
It's Us. So the director versus themselves.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's going to be a movie directed. So for example, the first one is Jordan Peele. So we're going to do Get Out versus Us.
Oh, okay.
So it's the director versus themselves.
So when did you take these numbers?
Yesterday. So Friday following release of Us.
I'm going to say Get Out.
Walk us through your...
I mean, it was 100%, but as the, critics and... This is the critic score, right?
Yeah, it's the Tatometer score.
I'm thinking it's probably going to get dropped down over the weekend or whatever to below Get Out.
Yeah, this one's a little tricky because Us has only been out a day as of when I took these numbers.
Yeah, and I know Us at a point was 100%.
Sure.
And I'm pretty sure that Get Out wasn't 100%, but it's probably like 99, 98. And I'm thinking Us is probably like 95 now.
Wow, man, you're like the fucking chosen one for this. Get Out, 98%. Us, 95%. Wow, like the prophet. Okay, so Bryce gets 1 point for the first one. Second,
Man, that deserves like 5 points.
yeah,
I named both scores.
Okay, I'll give you 2 points for that.
Okay, all right.
So the second one is going to be Steven Spielbergo.
Senor Spielberg.
Senor Spielbergo. So the first movie is Jaws, and the second movie is Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh, wow. This one's... the Jaws. Yeah, this one's hard because Jaws is... Both of them are legendary.
Oh, yeah.
I think Jaws is more beloved than Close Encounters.
Maybe.
But Close Encounters would definitely be more of a critical darling.
They both star the same guy.
They star the same guy.
Yeah, what's his face? Little diminutive guy. Who
Oh, yeah, that's right. You're right. Richard Dreyfuss.
Dreyfuss, yeah. Builds the circus tent out of mashed potatoes.
Yeah. Or Devil's Peak.
Right.
Is that what it was?
Looks like a circus tent.
No, you're thinking of The Simpsons again.
It also does look like a circus tent in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
I'm going to guess Close Encounters.
1 point off. Jaws is 97 and Close Encounters is 96.
Oh, yeah.
But you made up for that with the last one.
Yeah. I mean, Jaws is the better movie.
Yeah, it is.
I should have had more faith in critics.
So third matchup is going to be Sam Raimi. We got Drag Me to Hell versus the original Evil Dead.
Oof.
Boy, Drag Me to Hell, man. We got to review that movie soon.
Drag Me to Hell was
So
really
much-
great.
So much fun.
Yeah. Probably, is that the best PG-13 horror movie ever?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, yeah.
That's probably the scariest PG. No, I don't know. We'd have to look back at what's the scariest PG-13 movie and what's the best
I
PG-13
think maybe The
horror
Ring.
movie.
I think The Ring might actually be PG-13.
Oh, yeah?
Maybe.
Yeah, this is another one of those where it's like Evil Dead is legendary and like influential, and so critics will probably like that, and critics over time will review that one better.
Yeah.
Drag Me to Hell is probably based off of just the original release reviews. Not a lot of people are going back to the well with Drag Me to Hell.
Right.
I'll say Evil Dead.
That's solid logic, and it got you a point. It's because Evil Dead is 95, Drag Me to Hell is 92.
Nice.
Although, if I'm being honest, I think Drag Me to Hell trumps the original Evil Dead. I mean, if we're talking Evil Dead 2, then it becomes a totally different thing. But
Yeah.
the original Evil Dead. Okay, so now we got a very controversial director, Lars von Trier, who, you know what? Actually, this is interesting to me because the movie that I can't get out of my head is The House That Jack Built.
Uh-huh.
It sticks with me more than anything we've watched. I think about it constantly. I'm like, in a way, I'm obsessed with the movie. And I don't dislike it like I did before.
Yeah.
I just don't want to watch it again because of how fucked up it was.
Right.
But really, if you're talking about something that really stuck with me, man, The House That Jack Built, it's like a taste I can't get out of my mouth.
The house that Jack built, like, now that I think of it, most of that movie, most of the scenes give me the same feeling that the Buffalo Bill scenes do in Silence of the Lambs.
Right. It's all it definitely kept my attention. And there was a part of the experience, because we watched it in an old school theater, in a special one-off showing of the director's cut.
Yeah, with a bunch of hipsters from Portland.
With a bunch of hipsters from Portland. So there's a portion of it that was just the ambiance of the theater that stuck with me. It all just felt very surreal. Anyway, so we have The House That Jack Built versus Antichrist, another very controversial movie with some very upsetting scenes.
This one, you have to depend on how much do critics like the smell of their own farts.
Mm-hmm. Critics are pretty universal in hating Lars von Trier.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen it, but I'm going to say Antichrist, just because I think it's one of those movies that's like, yes, it's very, very disturbing and tasteless, but it's important.
I really want to see this movie because I feel that way about it, not even having seen it. But no, you're wrong. It's The House That Jack Built is less distasteful. We'll say that.
Okay.
At a 58, and Antichrist got a 52.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I mean,
at least it shows like we said, Rotten Tomatoes does not measure how good it is. Not like it's not an average of scores.
Right.
It's an average of sentiment.
Right.
So it's split between critics that liked it and disliked it.
It's very, if anyone in the audience is interested in having a good time, go and look up reviews on Lars von Trier movies, because it's like watching a master troll even critics.
Yeah. Even better, watch interviews of Lars von Trier on YouTube, and it's like there's like one where it's a panel interview with everyone from Melancholia, I think. Uh-huh. And he's like, I really sympathize with Hitler. Oh. And you see like...
everyone recoils.
What's her name? Kirsten Dunst just like, oof. Just because they're like, they know him because they've worked with him, right. And they know he's just being a troll, but they're also like,
you can't say
Lars, we're trying to promote this fucking movie. We're trying to make money back from the investment. Stop sympathizing with Hitler.
It's like he doesn't care.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so you didn't get that one. Let's see here. You got 2 points for the first. You missed the second, but you made up for it. You got the third, and you missed this one. So you have 3 points. No, one.
Yeah,
1,
3
2,
points.
3. Yeah, 3 points. Okay, so the final one is George A. Romero. We got Creepshow versus the original, The Crazies. Did you ever...
The Crazies.
Did you ever see either the original Crazies or the remake in 2011?
I have not. But... the fact that it's remade, it must be pretty good.
Yeah, I believe he was executive producer on the remake as well.
I'll say The Crazies.
Incorrect.
Damn.
Yeah, so you come away with 3 points.
Dang darn damn.
Creepshow 71, The Crazies 64.
French champagne.
Hit me with that.
I just did.
The French.
Okay, and finally...
the French.
Roar.
Finally, we got... it came from social media.
I have that one.
Yes, it came
From social media.
to fill the world with terror, to bring you unforgettable suspense. What was it? Where did it come from? Who were the all-powerful creatures it brought?
From social media.
And what did they want on Earth?
So, about a month ago, this is a little bit late on this one, so you just forgive me, but about a month ago, I ran a poll that had a lot of participation on Twitter, asking the question, which is the scariest natural disaster? And then I added as many natural disasters as Twitter would let me, which turned out to be 4. So we have 4 natural disasters that we're pitting against each other. We have tsunami. We have hurricane/spinny wind. We have earthquake. And then we have sinkhole. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, Bryce...
And we're kind of I think through the comments on Twitter, we grouped tornado and hurricane together, basically.
Yeah, tornado. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with the long-term bout/feud between Bryce and myself, Bryce claims that sinkholes are the scarier natural disaster.
I claim that sinkholes are the scariest natural disaster.
And
that there's nothing more frightening than the earth opening up and swallowing you into a bottomless pit.
You're a fucking lunatic, and you should be locked up, because earthquakes are obviously the scariest natural disaster. They affect so many more people. The locality is huge, and they can, while a sinkhole, yes, can swallow a couple buildings, an earthquake can level all of LA.
Yes, this is true. The destruction of an earthquake is, uncontestable. It's much worse. But we're talking scary.
Yeah.
Earthquakes is the ground shaking. It's not normal, but you have earthquake drills. Like, there's things that you can do.
Sure, you have earthquake
go stand in a doorway. Go get under a parking structure.
There's no sinkhole drill. I guess you're right.
Go out into an open field and roll around on the ground. There's nothing that will happen to you.
I don't think you or the people orchestrating these fucking earthquake drills have any idea what an earthquake is, because if you've been in an earthquake, there's no fucking running into a field. There's just crumpling into a little blob on the floor and praying that the structure doesn't come down around you.
Right. Well, I mean, I can at any point in my life I can examine. Okay, what's my contingency plan for an earthquake? Which is in this room, I'd be like, all right, I can get under the desk. I could go over to that wall because it's concrete. It's not going to fall in on me. Or I could get in the doorway. There's more, support around the frame. There's I can be 2 or 3 steps away from, a contingency plan. Sinkholes, the ground beneath you disappears and you're gone.
There's no drill for sinkholes.
There's no drill for sinkholes.
I'll grant you that. But
and there's something eminently biblical about the earth swallowing you up. It's like the most impressive of God's wraths in the Bible is he just opens up the earth and swallows a group of people because they were disobeying.
Which could be an earthquake, by the way.
Which could be an earthquake. Well, sinkholes are I think I agree with you. Sinkholes are the scariest aspect of earthquakes.
See, now we're getting a little bit into where I wanted to go with this. Technically, according to this poll on social media, which was attended by hundreds and hundreds of people, tsunami is by far and away the scariest natural disaster, which got a 48%.
Yeah.
Hurricane/spinny wind got a 9%. Earthquake got a paltry 20%. And sinkhole got, 23%. Scarier than solely earthquake. However, I would like to point out that I did engineer this in my favor, because tsunamis are driven by earthquakes, Bryce. So now suddenly I have 68%. What now, bitch? I just dropped the mic.
Yeah, I don't buy it.
I don't buy it.
Sinkholes are still scarier. Sinkholes are the most frightening. It's like, what's scary about tsunami?
What?
It's the abyss attacking you. It's the ocean, which represents an endless abyss, and then it encroaches on your territory. And that's exactly what sinkholes do. It just swallows you up into the abyss. That's what's the scariest part of it.
I mean, an earthquake is the abyss from even below the ocean trying to get at you. So, I mean, it's just a matter of me being right and you being wrong.
No,
really.
the earthquake's just shaking.
I feel the earth move.
Are you scared
under my feet
of shaking or falling?
Oh man,
I'm scared of falling.
I guess this is being broken down in a lot of different ways here. But I will say that the thing that I believe I'm factoring into this argument that I don't think you are is likelihood. The likelihood of a sinkhole affecting me or my life is nil, whereas the likelihood of an earthquake hurting me or someone I know, great.
See, I don't know. You can go to places where earthquakes don't happen. We live in like the Ring of Fire where we're on a fault zone, so it is a part of our life. But I mean, in the Pacific Northwest, much less so than California.
Yeah,
you can move to the Midwest and earthquakes are not a problem.
That's true, but then you got to deal with the spinning wind.
Sinkholes can happen anywhere. Sinkholes can be man-made. They can be naturally occurring.
I wish the audience could see your face right now. You're lit up with excitement.
And another thing to factor in, how many shows have there been made about earthquakes? Because I discovered last night that there's a whole show on the Sci-Fi Channel called Sinkholes, Swallowed Alive.
Yeah, you texted me about this.
It was on episode 11 of season 1. I'm like, yeah, there's a whole season's worth of talking about terrifying sinkholes.
Of course, there's a whole, because it's exotic, it's rare. The rarity is what makes it interesting. Earthquakes are a dime a dozen. They're everywhere, killing people left and right.
But they can strike at any moment.
If you're in Florida, maybe. Again, this is locality based. Or in, West Virginia, good luck. You're going to hit a sinkhole probably. So with that, the debate is closed. Earthquakes.
Sinkholes are scary.
Okay. So with that, thank you very much for listening to Horror Movie Talk. Again, we post new episodes every Wednesday. Oh, big shout out to the lady who sat next to me in the theater and who claimed she was going to jump out of her skin, but didn't. You kept it together, and for that, I salute you. And thank you for being a cool, enjoyable person to sit next to while we watched us. Mm-hmm. So that's my shout out for this week's episode.
Shout out to Olga on Facebook that always consistently likes
yeah.
our stuff.
Olga is great, man. Every single post we put out there on Facebook, she's like, "What's up, guys? I like this."
Yeah, and Brad.
Yeah,
he's pretty great too.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone, for liking, sharing, subscribing. We really appreciate it. If you want to help the show out, head on over to Shudder and enter HMT at checkout to get that 30-day free trial of the premier horror streaming service, curated lists, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, got Gremlins 2, the new batch, which we are going to be recording in episode 4 right after this. So head on over to Shudder, enter HMT at checkout, and that will help out the show. And we're struggling artists, so you need to help us. Also, if you'd like to help us, head on over to our website, horrormovietalk.com, and anytime you got to do your shopping, just click through the link at the top of the page. It's green. It takes you to Amazon, and then we get a couple cents anytime you buy, bottle nipples for your baby, or cat litter for your cat, or that shipment of extra large dildos that you just can't do without. Special thanks to everyone who's listening. I'm sure this is going to be a big episode because Us is a big movie, and you guys should definitely check it out in theaters. So thank you again, and have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye.